Hello everyone and welcome. My name is Roberto Corona. I am an Italian anthroposopher and astrologer, and in this video we're going to talk about the next full moon in Cancer on January 13, which is the first full moon of 2025 that comes with a very particular feature, and in fact this moon occurs with the Sun in conjunction with Comet C 2024 G3 Atlas, which will reach its perihelion the same day of the full moon. Now, this moon takes us out of the atmosphere of the holy nights to walk us through one of the darkest and coldest stretches of the year. And in fact, we find ourselves immersed, so to speak, in the forces of Capricorn, the cardinal earth sign, which officially starting winter, a season ruled by Archangel Gabriel. Now, before tackling the chart of the full moon in Cancer, let's take a closer look at Comet G3 Atlas's perihelion. So, as you can see, the comet highlighted by this red cross here is conjoining the Sun, and it is located at 27 degrees of the zodiac sign of Capricorn in the starry image of Sagittarius. And please keep in mind that the comets are highly unstable phenomena, meaning that it could disintegrate and not survive the proximity to the Sun. Nevertheless, we will take into account the position of the comet with regard to our spiritual considerations later on this video. So, as always, let's start from the last changes in the sky. We have on January 3rd, Venus entering Pisces, the zodiac sign of her exaltation. And we know that since Venus will be retrograde this year, it will be between Pisces and Aries for basically the entire first half of 2025. And so this ingress is quite important because Venus is going to stay between these two signs for half 2025. Then on January 6th, Mars retrograde enters Cancer. This is a very important date, both because, of course, it is the date of the Epiphany, and because Mars retrograde enters the sign of his fall. So I'll leave you the link of my video about Mars retrograde in the description box for those who want to learn more about it. And finally, on January 8th, we have Mercury entering Capricorn, and we can see Mercury down here in the chart together with the Sun in the same sign. Now, this is the chart of a full moon, and this means that we are reaching the peak of the manifestation process of the etheric forces on the Earth. And in particular, this process started with the last new moon in Capricorn on December 30th. But in general, it is a moment of retrospect, of reviewing the past as the light of the full moon is shed in the darkness. So it is also a time for awareness, revelations, liberation, release, and especially, I would say, purification this time, given the presence of a non-periodic comet, which is a good comet, as we're going to see. Now, with this moon, the gestation of new impulses begins slowly, approaching the date of the next new moon in Aquarius, happening on January 29. So let's take a closer look at the chart, starting with the position of the moon that is placed at 24 degrees of Cancer in the starry image of Gemini. Now, the moon is in domicile, so this means that it basically rules the event in question. But above all, as you can see here, the moon is in close conjunction with star Pollux, which is the fixed star placed on the head of Pollux, who is one of the two starry twins that you can see here holding hands, right? Now, in particular, Pollux is the immortal twin, who happens to be a fighter. And in fact, it is no coincidence that the star has the nature of Mars. Now, this is a very important feature because the nature of the star basically confirms one of the most significant aspects of the chart. And I am referring to the conjunction of Mars in Cancer with the full moon. So this is very, very interesting because we have the moon in conjunction with Mars on a planetary level, And the moon is also in conjunction with Pollux, a star of the nature of Mars, but on a star level. So clearly we have a lot of martial influences in the chart. Now the sun is, of course, in the opposite 24 degrees Capricorn. And as we said, it is in conjunction with the Comet G3 Atlas. And on top of that, it is also in a out of sign conjunction with Pluto in Aquarius. Pluto, which in turn is in opposition to Mars. And if you remember, we talked about the Mars-Pluto opposition happening at the turn of the new year, and this chart is basically activating it. So you can see it here. This is the opposition between Pluto and Mars activated by the luminaries that are, of course, in opposition because this is a full moon, right? So from the point of view of the aspects, the chart proposes many benefic aspects, I would say, organized according to a cradle configuration that involves both Neptune and Uranus. So this is the cradle. As you can see, it is formed by these three sextiles and these two trines here. So let's tackle the meanings of the chart, starting as always from the physical meanings. A new moon in Cancer is all about protective and safeguarding maneuvers, I would say, both in regard to home and family, because of course Cancer, but also to the homeland, which is a signification falling under the Cancer spectrum. In fact, as we've seen, the presence of Mars and Pollux clearly points to strategic and military maneuvers of a purely defensive nature, I would say. And this is because Mars is in fall in Cancer and retrograde. And for this reason, if you remember, we have described it sort of retreating in his castle. So we have basically Mars trying to create this protection through Cancer forces. So what's happening? We have the full moon, right? So we have this clear light of the moon that in a sense is like sort of revealing critical points that we must deal with. So what are they? Well, first of all, we have the opposition with Pluto in Aquarius that can represent a subversive and revolutionary power that can destabilize us, right? And then we have the trine of the moon with Neptune, on the other hand, that you can see here. Now, this can refer definitely to chaos, deception, and confusion, at least from a material standpoint. And please know that even though this is a trine, I don't personally find Mars-Neptune aspects positive, at least from a material perspective, because these archetypes are so different that whenever they touch, the situation on a material level can get messy. And then we also have the sextile of the moon with Uranus in Taurus, which is this aspect here. And this can definitely make these maneuvers, I would say, hasty because of this impulse coming from Uranus that's always quick and revolutionary in a sense. Now, overall, this means that we find ourselves from a physical point of view strengthening our defenses, protecting ourselves and our family, and in addition to that, safeguarding better our homeland, represented by Cancer. From a psychological perspective, the chart is quite emotional, mainly because of the trine of the moon with Neptune, which, being the planet of collective emotions, resonates a lot with the water element proposed by the moon in Cancer. And plus, it is a full moon, so quite emotional by itself. Now, given the great participation of Mars on a planetary level, on a star level, and the activation of this Mars-Pluto opposition, emotions here are mainly two. We have, on one hand, anger, which is the martial emotion par excellence, right? Which leads us to react and fight also in the positive way, I would say, as well as fear, which is the other emotion that can definitely be triggered by Pluto. And in particular, I would say that Pluto can leverage our shadow self, our unresolved fears, right? So we want to remember that in general, triggered negative emotions can be also an opportunity to work on our unresolved issues. And this leads us to the spiritual meanings of the chart, because here the role of star Pollux becomes crucial. In fact, in astrosophy, the constellation of Gemini that we have here is connected to the so-called spirits of form, and they are the creators of the human eye. That is our divine spark that we carry within us, our spirit, right? So it is precisely Pollux, the immortal twin, to represent our eye, our spiritual part, who I would say almost emerges in contrast with the qualities of the other twin, which is Castor, who represents instead our mortal self, our mortal part. Now, in general, the constellation of Gemini always requires us to confront somehow dualism. And in this regard, understanding that our I, our awareness, our consciousness, basically awakens precisely through the clash, the contrast with the material reality. So, simply put, our immortal I awakens in a mortal realm, where unfortunately the martial dimension of conflict that we also find here dominates. And this means that from a spiritual perspective, we're not only called to work on our soul, to shadow work, right? But also to develop a clear perception of our double, our doppelganger, right? And what's that? What's our double? It is a being that has the task of contrasting our evolution in such a way as to allow our immortal part to emancipate itself and ultimately to become free and conquer even death. Now, it is clearly a very, very long path that is, however, blessed by the spirits of form, and that we are called to realize through our chain of incarnations, right? A path that sometimes the celestial writing indicates quite clearly, such as in this chart, that is also quite martial, right? Now, on top of that, during this full moon, we are encouraged by the presence of Comet G3 Atlas, and in fact, it is a non-periodic comet, and as such, it is a comet that is shaped by very, very high spiritual entities, the seraphim and the cherubim, who collect through the comet all the harmful astral forces that could overwhelm us. So in particular, it is the negative impulse brought by the Mars-Pluto opposition to benefit from this purification, which comes as a real help from the spiritual world during a full moon, when we have the moon waning, and this process of release and purification starting. And so we have the spiritual world protecting, safeguarding us from an excess of negative astral forces. And this is definitely a good sign in the sky. Now, in this regard, I'd like to conclude by reminding you the virtue of Capricorn indicated by Rudolf Steiner that I find really appropriate, and that says, courage becomes the power of redemption. As always, thanks for watching. If you want to support my work, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell not to miss out on future astrological insights. I am Roberto Corona. See you in the next video.